The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed during this or any broadcast belong solely to our guests or our hosts. These broadcasts do not represent or reflect the views of their employers, sponsors, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey. And during the month of February, we will be highlighting conversations that I feel a necessity for educators, as well as the recognition of Black History Month. These conversations are sparked by photos and articles I've seen on Twitter about how not to celebrate Black history. The gist for anyone participating in Black History Month, not to come across as performative, it is important to understand the culture and experience of Black people in America. As some educators begin to celebrate Black history during the month of February, African American males continue to face a bleak future in 2021. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 1 in 3 Black men can expect to go to prison in his lifetime. Our guest, Assistant Principal Ricardo Bates, works extensively to change this narrative. Ricardo is passionate about mentoring students of all cultures, but understands that reaching Black youth during COVID-19 is a priority. He spent 6 years in education, advancing through the ranks from starting as an English teacher to his current role as an assistant principal. He's played college football at the University of Houston. There he discovered that he has a passion for filmmaking and storytelling. So in this episode, we speak with Ricardo about his experiences mentoring African American youth, and also discuss how to get students to thrive when teachers build relationships with them and create authentic learning experiences. So, like we always do at this time, let's collaborate, communicate, and educate with the best educators in the world right here on Flipboard EDU Podcast. Welcome back, Flipboard fam. This is your favorite coach, Coach Jeffrey, and I'm here with another amazing guest. I got Mr. Ricardo Bates. Sir, welcome to the show.
How you doing, my brother? I appreciate you allowing me to come on here on this platform. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on. So before we get started, let's tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
A little bit about myself. Where do we start? Just try to keep it brief. I'm originally from Alabama. I came in Houston, Texas. I attended the University of Houston, where I played college football there for 4 years. And now my path is a little bit different from the athletic realm. I'm an assistant principal, and I'm a visual storyteller. I make films and documentaries and things like that now.
Excellent. So this school that you work at, I used to work at that same high school, as a matter of fact.
Oh, you did?
Yes, sir. I don't know if y'all still say act like a Bronco, think like a boss. I think that's what we used to say back in the day.
Yeah. Team, no limits, full throttle. Man.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Man. And just to connect to some of my good people work over there, man, I got to get a shout out to my boy, Kerry Wright. That's my boy. He works over there. There's so many of the good teachers that was over there, man. I really enjoyed myself when I was at that school.
Yeah, it's a small world, man.
Speaking of Coach Smallwood, I forgot about that.
Yeah, good people. Good people.
Coach Gay. I didn't know Coach Gay, but Coach Gay was a good dude. Like after I left, I think he ended up coming in. But yeah, man, so those are some of our old stomping grounds. And then we got something in common too. I think we have the same mentor, right?
Yes, Dr. Michael Milstead. It's really interesting, man, because when I first encountered Dr. Milstead, English teacher at the high school, he's the one that planted that seed of saying you need to pursue your master's and you need to look at transitioning to admin, and allow me to shadow him and ask him any type of questions and work on projects. And it's just crazy that he's the one that planted that seed. And I look at where I'm at now, and man, I thank him for doing that for me, because I'm loving this. I'm loving this side of education, being on the admin side.
Administration is made for some people, and then some people just not so much. But shout out to my boy, Dr. Michael Milstead, Hall of Famer. Just a little bit of background before we move on. Dr. Milstead is a guest host of this show, Emeritus. So whenever he's available, he can help guest host on this show. All right. This is Black History Month, and we're starting off with the theme. And I didn't really tell you about this theme yet, but you approached when we talked on the phone. Basically, we talked about working with young African-American males, and that's a passion that we both share. So why are you so passionate about working and building young African-American boys?
Just for the obvious, I look like I'm an African-American man, but I was an African-American boy at one point in time. And for two, somebody helped me in my life to put me on a straight path and put me on the straight and narrow. And we're still the best of friends to this day. You know, we carry so much as Black people, especially Black youth, trying to juggle so much. You need somebody to help you navigate the cold realities of the world. And I think this is just my personal opinion. If you're not pouring into young people, man, like, what are you really doing? Because they are the future. So I'm truly passionate about helping young African-American men find their way, find their purpose.
As an assistant principal myself, one of the main issues that I find with working with African-American boys is a lot of times when I meet them, they have already gotten into what we like to call, quote unquote, trouble. They've broken some type of school discipline or whatever. What kind of methods do you use to approach them now they're in front of you? How do you reach out to them?
Well, it's definitely not coming down on them because that's what they're accustomed to, that's what they're used to. So everything has to be from a point of love. Yeah, you made this mistake or you made this poor judgment call, but that does not define who you are, man. Like, you got so many great qualities within you. Just have to tap into it and channel that in the right way. And that's the position that I take. I'm not coming down on anybody. I'm not nailing you to the cross because you made your life is not over, because you have great from you, and I'm going to come from a place of love. See, and using that approach, you'll see like the guard come down and say, okay, Mr. Bates really does care about me. You know, and then from that, the relationship builds and they open up and they come to you and tell you more. And I've had plenty of kids that they have a heated moment and they just come to my office down because they don't want to get in trouble.
You say you started off as an English teacher. How did you begin discipline patterns when students got in trouble in your classroom? Not just African-American boys, but what was your discipline tactics as a teacher when when students had to break your rules?
I'm always seeking to understand and getting to the root so we can rectify the behavior. Because if you're just putting gloss on something, or you just coming down on a kid and punching them, so you're gonna repeatedly have the same issues or the same problem that comes up within your classroom or any other workspace or whatever. So it's always about seeking to understand, getting to the why of why this kid was acting out or why this kid did this, and attacking the problem, not the person. Yeah.
This summer, a lot happened with African Americans. We watched a man get choked out on TV to death, and a graphic, and our kids had to come to school and deal with that. And then we still had that culture of systemic racism that was in education to begin with. And I don't want you to speak specifically. I'm not trying to back you in the corner, but I would just say, ever in your career, were you, when you went back to school, were you more aware as an administrator, as a Black man, you came back to work and you got to be this administrator, and then you got like little Johnny coming in your office? The question is little Johnny acting out because he's now woke to what's happening, or is little Johnny acting up because this is how it's always been with little Johnny?
I think not just Black people. I think just seeing that George Floyd video, you have a conscience, man, that should have struck a nerve in any person. I don't care what color you are, to see, because that was the first time you saw a video of the execution of a Black man from start to finish, and to hear those words of this grown man like calling out for his mama, how does that tug at your heartstrings? And you look at it, he looks like us. It's like, man, that could have been me in that situation. Not only are we experiencing that, but like we have to walk in with an extra backpack as well, because as a Black man, like, we're sympathizing with this because that could have been us. But at the same time, you have these kids, they're seeing what's going on, and they're hearing the conversations within their own household. So I think people have a right to be angry. If you see something of that magnitude from start to finish, yeah, that definitely adds to why they would be acting out. But I don't think that's that's not all of it though, but it does add to it though.
What I noticed that when I went back to school and after that situation is that I think that everybody around me was more aware of how those situations can occur. Like using fake money to go to a store to calling the police, to overreacting, to the police overreacting, to my man being what they thought was inebriated, or whatever those cases are. People were very hypersensitive to that. And something else that was very hypersensitive in our community was people started to take a look at teaching practices and how they chastise African-American males. Did you notice that at all? Did you have that same awareness teaching and just not approaching instruction with that superiority mindset that was before we were all aware?
I think in any field that you're in, whether it's education, corporate, whatever, your experiences are going to shape what you portray outward. So whether that's the bias that comes in, whether that's whatever, like your experiences is always going to shape your beliefs and your personality.
I'm going to speak for some assistant principals who are in certain neighborhoods where African-American males are automatically chastised or overly chastised for things that are not necessarily another person of another culture wouldn't get in trouble for. And so they're sitting in front of you in your office or sitting in front of me. And we got to take a look at that educator. Has there been a more awareness around your educators looking at how they perform in the classroom when they deal out discipline for just people of different cultures?
That's been the ongoing discussion for years, and not just in Houston district, but nationwide, as far as people of color being disciplined at 3 times worse. Like, it's a disproportionate, like, as far as you getting a higher sentence or whatever for the certain crime, like a white person commits a crime and a black person a crime, and the black person receiving far harsher sentence, and students in the classrooms getting harsher disciplines doing the same thing. So yeah, it's definitely a parallel between the two.
One thing I noticed too, being assistant principal, was I'm automatically the bad guy. You know what I'm saying? So whether any student comes into the office, I am automatically the bad guy because I'm the one that has to give the discipline. Have you had that experience? And if not, then what experience have you had when you have to discipline all types of students?
That the title itself is going to like scare some kids. But again, that goes down to relationship building. When they know that you're not coming from that place of trying to discipline and more so trying to love on them and correct them, it works wonders to help them through and say, okay, you made this mistake. Why did you do it? This is the root. Okay, let's work through those roots so this doesn't happen again. I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Because if you just punish a kid, that's your first go-to without thinking like you haven't solved anything. You have not done anything like that help that kid, that young kid, be better in the future. And you're doing a disservice, quite honestly. You're doing a disservice to the kid. That's your first go-to is to nail them.
Yeah. Sometimes when we talk about equity and we look at discipline trees and we look at what is equitable for students, it seems that people go down this discipline route and they feel that because I issued this punishment to this student and I issued it, then that makes it fair. But I totally agree with you. It's about building relationships, and it's the ability to allow the students to express themselves and to let you know why they are there. And sometimes they know and sometimes they don't. But I feel that that's an issue that's not always necessarily addressed when we're talking about marginalized students to begin with. When did you become an educator, and what was the deciding factor in order for you to start teaching?
Just based on my relationship with my mentor, who's an educator as well, and he has his own school for African-American boys, Christian school, private school down in Montgomery, Alabama. And just being a witness to the transformation that he placed upon these young men. I was like, man, like that would be awesome to do something of that caliber and make that level of an impact. But yeah, my buddy, when I finished school, my buddy was like, man, you'd be great to do this, man. He was coaching at the time. I was like, okay, let's make this transition and let's get into this field of education. And I started out first year in the classroom teaching and coaching as well. And then that was a whole shock because that was like 2 full-time jobs and you're trying to get adjusted the 2 full-time jobs. And at the time, I had just got engaged too. So I'm never seeing my fiance at the time or whatever. And it's like you're getting home after practice, you're getting home at 6 o'clock and you're like dead tired. And then you have to like still make time for her. So it was definitely a shock. But I look back at it now, and that was years ago when I jumped into it, and now I'm on the other end. It's been a great ride so far. I wanted to go though. I wanted to quit, man. I was like, especially when they was like, no, you laughing, Lee. I was like, when they was like, yeah, so we had the game, right? Played the game Friday, and played the game on Friday, and then it was like, all right, so we're going to come up here on Saturday and break down the film and do all this. I was like, Saturday at 8 o'clock, and we up in here to 3 and 4 o'clock. I'm like, for what? It's high school football. Like, it's not that difficult. And then it was like, oh, okay, so we finished on Saturday, and it was like, okay, we're going to come on Sunday. We're going to come over Sunday, man, after church from like 1 to 5.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this is an international program, and we're talking about American high school football in the state of Texas.
That was grooving. But then outside of that, though, we're like the taxing thing, too. Like, so you had the Saturday film study. Some schools had the Sunday film study. But even then, you had the athletic period. So you had to go from teaching, had to rush down to the field house, change clothes, go practice, and they had to put the same clothes back on, man. I said, man, these people have lost their mind.
The Texas high school football coach, you are a dedicated group. And coaches in general, anybody that's a coach, you put your name down on that line as a coach, and I think it gives you a really good experience. You are also a filmmaker and a storyteller.
That's really my passion. So ever since I was like 12 years old, really good at writing. That's the correlation with me teaching English. Love writing, love reading. Remember when I was 12 years old and I saw Remember the Titans, and I remember watching it differently. I was like, oh man, I like the way they did this. I like the way they did this. I didn't know the technical terms just yet. But I was like, oh man, this is cool the way they did this. I remember watching it outside of it being a powerful message. And I was like, man, that'd be cool to entertain something like that. Being from Alabama where football is king, like you play football. So you got to suppress that passion in pursuit of like football, because that's what guys did. You played football. But once I got to Houston and I was doing the teaching and the coaching thing, and like the urge and the desire came back, I said, let me do something. And so I started writing it out, and I came up with my first documentary. It was based on my high school and our football team, which is like a dynasty in the state of Alabama, won all these state championships. And I did that project, and I was able to release it in a couple theaters back in Alabama, and it did really well. Sold out a couple nights. The whole city came out. It was a beautiful time. What I did was with that, I said the cap went off. I said, I need more of this. That feeling of seeing, you saw your title on the marquee, like you ride in the city and you see it on the marquee, man, that's a great feeling. And then I said, okay, let me parlay this into something for real. Because at the time, I just had that one project underneath my belt. So I went back to the University of Houston. I went back to the University College of Technology, and I pretty much just pitched them. I said, hey, I see what you guys are doing. I graduated from this college, but you guys don't have any like branding videos or anything like that to like push your brand and what you're trying to do at this college. And I pitched them, and they gave me an opportunity. And I'll always be grateful to Marilyn Jones, who was the communications manager at the time over there, for seeing something in me and giving me an opportunity. And we've had that relationship for 5 years. We were doing videos for them. And then I took that from the U of H thing, and people, word of mouth, and people got my contact and branched off, did engineering conferences, and was doing commercials for people's businesses. And now I just finished up my second documentary. It was called Fruit. And Fruit is based off of Matthew 7:16, and it's about the fruit you remember them. And again, it just goes back to mentoring and pouring into young people, like how will you remember what's the impact that you're making. And that project is done, and that project is about to be released this month, at the end of this month. We got a major release going on in Montgomery. So I'm really, really excited about that one.
Excellent. We're definitely going to have to link that into the article that we're writing here. And is there any way that we can see that?
So what I'm going to do is we're doing a big release in Montgomery at the end of the month. And then in March, we're doing the Houston release. But it looks a little differently because they're only allowing so many people at a time in it. So we found a space that will allow a good number of people. But if not, we are trying to push it on some digital platforms and all that stuff as well.
Okay. All right, man. Hey, I'd love to look at that. Matthew 3:17, correct?
Matthew 7.
Where can our listeners find you at?
I'm on Instagram, Ricardo D Bates, Twitter, same handle, Ricardo D Bates, Facebook, same handle. That's where you can find me. My website, www.batehouse.com. That's the name of my production company, Bait House Productions.
Ricardo, thank you for coming on the show. This is going to wind us down. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and you have a great day.
All right. Thank you, brother.
Welcome to Flip Tips. Today's Flip Tip is how to get started with Flipboard. Very simple. I want to thank Jeanette Spire and Terry Porter for coming up with our Flip Tips for today. The first thing you want to do is download the app for your Android or iOS device. Second thing you want to do is you want to create an account. Make sure you add a picture and complete your bio. Third thing you want to do is you want to follow topics. There are at least 34,000 topics that you can follow. Next thing you want to do is build your magazine. Navigate to the bottom of your profile icon and then select the collection options. Give your magazine a title and you've built your first magazine. I want to give a huge shout out for Terry Porter and Jeanette Spire on giving us today's Flip Tips.
Subscribe to our Flipboard EDU podcast magazine.
Flipboard fam, thanks for sticking with me on this episode. I want to thank Ricardo Bates for talking with us about mentoring Black youth and his passion of filmmaking. You can read more about this episode and other educators on our Flipboard Educators blog on flipboard.com. I want to give another huge shout out to Aileen Laylor and Crystal Vanderboom for the editorials on the Flip EDU Educators blog. Hey, I really appreciate you ladies. Remember to subscribe to our Flipboard EDU magazine on flipboard.com and share our podcast with an educator or colleague. Our podcast is available globally and everywhere you listen to podcasts. Also, you can check out Ricardo's latest film, coming soon, Fruit. Until next time, family.